All right, we're about to dive into a story that, on the surface, is just about some lost laundry. Sounds pretty minor, right? But believe it or not, a tiny dispute from the 1930s completely changed the game for pretty much every contract you and I sign today. Have you ever been there? You're about to click I agree on some software, or you're signing a waiver at the gym, and this little voice in your head just goes, what am I actually signing away here? Yeah, we've all had that feeling. Well, that exact feeling is what this story is all about. It's a perfect example of how something that seems totally trivial can have these huge legal ripple effects. And yep, it all kicks off with a handful of lost handkerchiefs. Okay, so let's set the scene. Let me introduce you to the guy at the heart of this whole thing. We're in England back in the 1930s. A fella named Mr. Alderslade drops off his laundry, and in that bundle, he's got 10 linen handkerchiefs, which, believe it or not, were pretty valuable back then. Everything seems fine until he comes back to get his stuff. The handkerchiefs vanished. The laundry company completely lost them. So, as you can imagine, Mr. Alderslade is not happy. He wants to be paid for the full value of his lost items. But the laundry company? They basically said, not so fast. And this is where a simple customer service issue blows up into a really fascinating legal fight. You know where this is going, right? The whole argument came down to the fine print on the back of the laundry ticket. Let's just look at the numbers here, because they tell the story. So on one hand, you've got Mr. Alderslade. He says his 10 handkerchiefs were worth 80 pence. That's what he wants back. Simple as that. But then the laundry comes back, points to their contract, and says, nope, the absolute most we can give you is 7 pence. I mean, that is a massive difference, right? And it all hinged on one little sentence in their terms. And this is it, the exact clause. Basically, the payout was capped at 20 times the cost of the laundry service. Since the service was super cheap, the payout was next to nothing. This is a classic exemption clause. It's a fancy legal term for that piece of fine print that's written specifically to get a company off the hook. And yeah, this one sentence, it became the centerpiece of the whole court case. So that's the big question, isn't it? Who's in the right here? Is it the customer who's out of his property? Or is it the business who's just following the rules they wrote? It really boils down to, can a company's fine print protect them, even when the problem is their own fault? To figure this out, the court had to dig into a really important legal concept. And that concept is negligence. So what is negligence? Put simply, it's not just a random accident. It's when a company fails to take reasonable care, they don't do their job properly, and because of that, you lose something. You could almost call it professional carelessness. And this is where the two sides really clashed. Mr. Alderslade's argument was basically, look, I get that your contract might cover some freak accident, but you didn't have an accident. You were just careless. You were negligent. That's on you. But the laundry fired back saying, doesn't matter. The clause covers everything. Any kind of loss, even if it was our own mistake. Okay, so the court has heard both arguments. Now it's time to make a call, and what they decided would end up having repercussions for a very, very long time. And the winner was the laundry company. Mr. Alderslade walked away with just 7 pence. But honestly, who won or lost isn't the most important part of this story. The real kicker is how the judge came to that decision. What the judge did was create this simple 2-step test, which we now call the Alderslade test. Here's how it works. Step 1, you read the fine print. Does it literally say the word negligence? If it does, game over, it's covered. But if it doesn't, you go to step 2. And for step 2, you ask a really clever question. What's the only way this company could even be legally at fault? If the only possible answer is through their own carelessness, well then that vague clause has to be interpreted as covering that carelessness. So let's apply that to our case. How could a laundry company be liable for losing your stuff? I mean, besides just being negligent. There's not really any other way, right? So the judge concluded that the general phrase lost or damaged articles had to include negligence, because otherwise the clause would be completely meaningless. All right, so I know what you might be thinking. Cool story about some old handkerchiefs. But so what? Why should I care? Trust me, this matters way more than you think. Because of this case, the Alderslade test became the gold standard for how the law looks at these kinds of clauses. It basically created the rule book for figuring out when a company can actually get away with limiting their liability for their own screw-ups. And once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. You know that sign in the parking garage that says, "Park at your own risk"? Or the endless terms and conditions for a new app? Even the tiny stub from a coat check? The legal logic behind all of that fine print can be traced right back to this case. It's what decides just how much power those words actually have. So, the next time you're about to click "I agree" or you grab one of those tickets from a machine, just take a second and think about Mr. Alderslade's Lost Handkerchiefs. It's a pretty powerful reminder that behind every single line of fine print, there's a whole history of arguments and court cases that decide what those words actually mean. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are you agreeing to today?